My name is Brian Lovins. I'm the assistant director here in Harris County. I'm the assistant over our community corrections, our community supervision divisions, which is a lot broader than most. We're kind of like a, for lack of a better term, a corporation in that we have our own HR, our own fiscal department. We operate relatively autonomous. We do operate, so my boss works for the judges, or for the board of judges. And so, and if folks don't know my history, so I used to work for the University of Cincinnati. For some, this is the time to throw shit at me, and others, this is their time. And I have to start this, and if we've ever engaged or if you've ever participated in any training around the university, looking back on my time at the university, I think we really missed the boat in a few things. I think that we did really well in some stuff and really bad in others. And this presentation really comes from that portion of what we did at the university that was really bad. And evaluated thinking about that over the course of the last 5 years. And what that was, and it's out of well-intentioned, it's out of good stuff. Right? There's this movement, obviously we're all familiar with, around evidence-based practices and adopting strategies that are effective. The problem was that, right, so someone would come here, Ed or I or Chris Lowenkamp or someone talk, and they'd say, oh, we want that. We want a risk assessment. We want thinking for a change. We want a curriculum. We want something. And then we would go to their organization, and they wouldn't prepare their organization. They wouldn't ready them. They wouldn't talk to them about why. They just know that's what they want, and so they would call, we would come train them, and there were literally times where I walked into a room and the people in the room didn't know what I was training them on that day. I've been in Harris County for 5 years, and we just started implementing anything that's remotely you would consider evidence-based practice beyond risk assessment. We just started implementing that this year. So it took 5 years to get us to a place where I felt comfortable implementing something that was about agent of change or about changing people's lives and not just taking care of the staff and developing infrastructure to support that. I've seen too many organizations that have adopted some evidence-based intervention or strategy and then the staff reject it and they can never do it again because of the institutional history. They'll say, oh, well, that thinking for a change stuff didn't work. And they just absolutely flat out refuse to do it moving forward. And so you have one bite at some of this stuff. And I think there are ways past that, and if you've failed and learned, I think we can start to change that. So today, you heard a little bit about this if you were here on Monday morning. Today, the discussion really is about how do we further this conversation about referee versus coach, and why that came to an existence. And so, it starts with the history of probation and parole or community corrections. Probation, parole, community corrections, so I'm going to use kind of the generic community corrections to cover all of it so I don't have to say 50 different things that we do every time. It was initially developed to divert low-risk individuals. That's what it was designed for. They actually designed it to pick the people who are their best candidates and to not send them to jail and to prison and just keep them in the community and let them do what they do and self-correct. It wasn't really designed to change behavior. It was designed to take compliant people and monitor them, and the few people who break the rules or the few people who go out of the bounds, send them back because it was a privilege to be on community supervision. And that's the system that we have. It assumed self-corrections. And everyone was low risk, and we had lots of high success rates, and so it looked great. It looked great on paper. Oh, 6% of the people returned to prison and were placed on supervision. It's because we were only serving those that really didn't need our help. They were the best of the best, handpicked to be the one who says, you know what, you don't have to go further in the system, you can stay here. For the last 40 years, we have had a debate on what probation officers or community corrections workers do. We've had this multiple hat, 7 hats, 3 hats. We're a debt collector, we're a social worker, we're a law enforcement. And depending on what we do, depending on where we are, and depending on who's in front of us, we think we switch hats. And then you think of this pendulum swinging piece, right? We've got this pendulum swinging of, oh, we're hug-a-thug, and then we're law enforcement, we're kicking in doors, and our job is to arrest revocation folks and to wear guns and badges and protection. Oh no, it's to help people and support them and give them love, right? And so this pendulum continues to swing. And the problem is the staff are saying they're confused as hell. They were hired under a law enforcement model, and now they're social workers. They're hired under a social worker model, now they're busting down doors. And so one of the problems is that we have this vision of a community corrections worker as having different hats and operating as different people in the same context. And think about it from the client's perspective, that individual sitting across the table. Oh, today you're going to be a social worker for me, but tomorrow you're going to arrest me? Right? That concept doesn't make sense, right? But it's how we've defined it. And so there's, right, so Faye Taxman's got some stuff, Viglione has some stuff around, so you can research kind of the history of what a probation officer is supposed to be, or more so what those research studies show is a reflection of the current environment that we operate under. And so they kind of say, okay, right now during the 80s, we're law enforcement. Now we're brokers. And so it just continues to pendulum swing. And I started thinking about we are measuring recidivism as a #1 outcome. We are soon going to be held to that at almost every legislative level, held to, funding-wise, of reducing recidivism. And if we think about it, the way we operate with all these different hats does nothing, and we're going to talk more about this, but does absolutely nothing to reduce recidivism. It's designed to take low-risk people who are going to walk the line, and if they cross the line, tap them back in, and eventually just cut them off. And so if we are going to actually have significant impacts and reductions of recidivism, we must operate in a different way. We really are around monitor, whistle, and report. And that's the process, and then repeat. So I have a question for you guys. Anybody recognize this keyboard? Looks a little different, doesn't it? Probably recognize this one, right? Which, of course, until we started texting, no one knew it was called the keywordy keyboard. We just thought it was a keyboard, right? But this is the keywordy keyboard. This is the Dvorak keyboard. The Dvorak keyboard was actually developed before the keywordy keyboard. The Dvorak keyboard was the first keyboard that was on mechanical typewriters, or most mechanical typewriters. So for folks that are my age, maybe a little bit older than me, you guys remember mechanical typewriters? So, some of our chiefs still have them on their desk. Mechanical typewriters, for those younger folks in the room, you might have seen one on an old Western or old Dick Tracy movie or show, but they had keys, and they had real metal keys that would pop up and strike the paper with ink tab on or an ink tape on it, and would hit. If you type too fast, what happened? It got jammed. The 3 keys, the 4 keys would jam up, and then what would you have to do? Unstick the keys, roll the thing up, put corrections tape on, roll it back down, backwards, type the letters that you accidentally jammed over top of it, roll it back up, check it, roll it, and get it all lined up, but then your reports look like this because you couldn't line it up. And then eventually you just ripped the paper out and said, screw it, I'm going to start over. So that was a problem with the mechanical typewriter, is you couldn't type too fast. So what happened was those folks who make mechanical typewriters actually went to MIT and Harvard and said, I need you to rearrange the keys. Because we've asked the typists, this happened in like 1936. Might be fake news on that, I don't know. So no one quote, oh, he said it was 1936. I looked this shit up on Google and it was 1932. Right? So, but what happened was, they asked the typist to slow down. They said, please stop typing so fast because you're getting super frustrated with the keys jamming and we can't do anything about it because they gotta go up and strike the paper and come back down, and there's the engineers haven't designed anything that can go faster than you can type. And so they begged them to slow down, and they wouldn't. So guess what they did? They went to researchers and said, can you rearrange the keys on the keyboard to significantly slow typers down? And what do you think they came up with? They came up with the keywordy keyboard. These letters are the most organized to make human beings type the slowest. They are. They are by design, by research, put in place to make us type slow. Look at it, think about it. Every English word but like 6 have a vowel in it. Where are the vowels? Reach up, reach up, reach up, reach up. 5 of the 6 vowels are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the 5 vowels. I forget why it's not a vowel. I have a PhD in criminology, not one in English. So 4 of the 5 vowels are on your right hand, and you're reaching, which slows you down. And then your pinky, which is not very agile, at least mine isn't. You're trying to touch the A, which is like a third of the letters, or a third of words have A's in it. You're trying to touch it with your left hand while you're moving your right. The letter T, pretty popular letter. Right? Fingers are here, here, here. You're reaching outside your hand to hit the T. S, on your ring finger. Right? It should be on your index finger. Pretty popular letter. Look where they are on the Dvorak keyboard. A, O, E, U, I, D, H, T, and S. The 5 consonants are the most used in the English language, and the 5 vowels, all in one hand. How many vowels, how many words have vowel consonant? Lots of them. So what are you doing if vowels on one hand and consonants are on the other? Much quicker to move finger, finger than finger, finger on the same hand. So I have a question for you. Why the hell do we still use this keyboard?
We've adapted.
The Dvorak keyboard, 33% fewer errors. The Guinness Book of World Records, 212 words a minute. You can actually get your chronos done in time. 30 times less stressful to your hands. How many people have family members or in this room who have carpal tunnel disease? Absolutely, it's from typing. Because it should be the class action lawsuit of Philip Morris for typewriter companies. They designed it so that we would get our hands hurt, right? Not officially, but that's the consequence of moving our fingers all over the board. Alternate hands, ergonomically superior, and 70% of the keys are used without lifting a single finger. So the question is why? Why do we still use the keywordy keyboard, even though they've been advanced technology for 100 years now? We already know what we're doing. We've been doing this for so long. Why would we change now? We're pretty good at typing with the keywordy keyboard. Not a big deal. It works. Too expensive to change. And it'll take much too much time to relearn how to do that. I'm old dog, no new tricks. You ever heard any of these? Daily, hourly, minutely? Right? These are the same things we say. So I'm going to expose you to a few Dvorak moments today. It's going to challenge the way we think about community corrections. It's going to challenge the way we think about working with people who've engaged in crime. It's going to challenge how our system is even set up. And I want you to keep an open mind and keep in mind that people are resistant to go to the Dvorak keyboard because it's what they don't do or because they do what they do. My guess is you're here because you're less of that. That you're ready to, you've kind of taken the blue pill of the matrix and you're ready to kind of look down the hole and say, what's going on behind there? Meta-analysis, fancy word for a study of studies. Right? So meta-analysis takes all the studies across, not all the studies that the researcher wants to include in the study. And not all studies, because think about it, if you have a study and it shows your program is shitty, what do you do with the study? Hide the hell out of it. Hope no one read it. right? So not all studies are published, and not all studies that show effect one way or the other are published. But what we know is this. There isn't a single meta-analysis that shows that punishment-based programs change behavior. All the meta-analysis around prison show no effect for recidivism. Incapacitation effect, fine. Deterrent, or sorry, not deterrence, but just desserts. People just deserve a punishment. They did something of harm, and they deserve 12 years for that, regardless of it makes them worse, better, whatever. Fine. But as a community safety mechanism, unless you're looking for an incapacitative effect, that you're going to put someone away for a really, really, really long time, prison shows no effect in reducing recidivism. Contrary to what we believe, the worse you make prison actually increases recidivism. Right? So back in the 80s when we had the no frills prison movement and take the books away and take the movies away and take education and Pell Grants, because right, the people, and that's a just desserts move, right? Because the people who didn't commit crime don't get Pell Grants, some of them. So why would we give all of them in the facilities Pell Grants? But what they found was those institutions that became no frills and they removed all of that actually had increased recidivism rates for people that returned. It's not surprising, right? There's 7 of you here. Just see. You guys are like, what the hell is wrong with me? I know. Again, PhD in criminology, not English or math. There's about 50 of you guys here. And so what we're going to do is, I've already set it up because I live here, and the sheriff's going to keep you locked in here for 4 years. And they're going to pass some food in here, but this, whatever's in here is all you get, and you got a cell phone blocker, so you can't use your cell phone anymore. And are you going to be better or worse when you walk out of here? If you can walk out, you're going to be significantly worse. Why would we ever assume that locking someone in a room for 4 years and not doing anything with them would make them better? Because it's based on a deterrence model. It's based on if we make it bad enough, they won't want to return. And the reason that they come back to jail is because it's nice there and they get 3 hots and a cot and all that crap. Not true. There are reasons that people go back to jail. It's not because it's nice there. They go back to jail because they don't have the skills to be successful at changing their life. And that's the reason. And our system is designed, Dvorak moment here, our system is designed to punish change, and you can't punish people to change. I'll give you an example. How many of you guys speak French fluently? We got 1. You are going to be a very popular man in about 12 seconds. And you may want to check out real quick. All right. So the rest of you, again, I've got the sheriffs ready. They're going to lock you in here, and you have 1 hour to be French fluent. And if you're not fluent in French, you don't get to leave tonight. And I'm going to come back in the morning. And if you're not fluent in French in the morning, now he's already fluent, so he gets to leave. So he's not even your resource. And again, we block Google Translate, so you can't even do that. So he's our trustee in the jail. So tomorrow morning, if you're not speaking French fluently, I'm going to graduate my sanction because that's what we're supposed to do. Because somewhere in the research, it's supposed to suggest that if we make the punishment worse, then you'll stop doing it. So tomorrow morning, if you're not speaking French fluently, 2 days here in the room. And then at the end of those 2 days, 4 days. And then 8. And then by that time, after 8, you know what? You don't care about your family? You don't want to go back home? Not motivated to change? Why aren't you speaking French? I'm telling you exactly what you need to do. If you speak French, I'll let you out. I want to let you out. Why aren't you compliant? Because you don't know how to speak French. I could put a gun, I hate to use this analogy in these days, but I could put a gun to your head and say, speak French now. You have lots of choices, but one of them is not what? Speak French. You could run, beg, cry, try to take the gun from me, which you'd be very successful at because I don't like guns. Even though I'm in Texas, I know it's an oxymoron. You could do lots of different things. But Speaking French is not one of them. No matter how hard I punish you, if you don't have the skill to speak French, you're not capable of it. I've got to do what to get you to speak French? I got to teach you. I got to coach you. I got to support you. I got to shape you. If you're not practicing, what do I got to do? I got to admonish you. Right? Because you can't speak French just by laying the book under the bed. I tried it. It doesn't work. So what do referees do? And what does this have anything to do with behavioral change? Referees signal when someone's done. When they finish, they scored a run, they hit a basket, game's over, scored a touchdown. They just watch. They don't help the player. They don't encourage them. They don't move them along. They don't teach them how to catch the ball if they dropped it. Could you imagine next week when Tom Brady does his magic, GOAT by the way, when he on the field and one of the players drops the ball, could you imagine the ref going over and saying, you know what, when the ball comes over like this, you need to stretch your hands out a little bit further. It's okay, nice try, keep going, it'll be all right. Right, could you imagine that? We don't do that. Referees don't do that. They blow the whistle because it was an incomplete pass, and they say, get your ass back to that line, and if you don't get 10 yards, you get to give the ball away. They huddle up. They take abuse, right? They get yelled at. Referees get yelled at, they get cussed at, they get threatened, and good referees stay neutral. They don't get emotionally involved in the play. They concur with each other. They staff cases. They say, what did you see? I saw this. Oh, he's out. Okay. They blow the whistle. They give yellow cards. They kick you out of the game. But what they don't do is improve the game. Their goal as a referee is to do what? What's a referee's goal? Enforce the rules. To not be a deciding factor in a game. A good referee is someone who is not a deciding factor in the game, that the best team on that day, in that moment, wins, and it's not based on the referee. So if someone loses, what do the referees believe? Wasn't my fault. I'm procedurally appropriate. If they win, what's their response? Who gives a shit? One of you lost. I'm not on either team. I'm just here to apply the rules. What do coaches do? Teach. They acknowledge when people score a touchdown. They call the bullpen. Well, I don't know why I had to pick my Reds for the bullpen call, but should have picked the Yankees. They had lots of calls this year to the bullpen. They call the bullpen, meaning that, hey, I got this player who's struggling. They may need some help. Might need to get him out of the game. I might need to put you in. They cheer. They admonish. They give signals. They teach. And they relate. Those are coaches. They're not changing hats. They're not putting their coach hat on and their social worker hat on and their player hat on and their ref hat on. They're one person with a common goal, which is what? To succeed. To get their players to perform at the best level they possibly can, no matter what. And they get paid to win. They get paid to get their players to be in a position to win. And that's a coach. So let's look at, this is a little bit small. I tried to blow it up as much as I possibly could, knowing that no one was going to sit in the front row. Main job function. Procedural justice as a referee. Procedural justice means I apply the rules as intended. I'm fair. I'm consistent. I want to make sure that everything's right. So a really good referee is someone who applies the rules evenly and doesn't get involved in the outcome. A good coach is someone who wins. In our world, defined as behavioral change. Response to a rule infraction. A referee blows the whistle and applies the penalty. A good coach teaches, trains, helps the person learn from their mistakes, engages them, and builds skills, or punishes even, right? Good coaches bench players. They've got to. Knowledge of the offender or the client. Know if that person followed the rules or not. Know what their deficits are, their criminal check needs that need to be improved, and strengthen them so that they can be successful when they get to that moment of game time. They can handle the situation effectively. The relationship, think about it. What is a relationship between referee and player? There isn't any. You don't see referees high-fiving people when they score touchdowns or baskets. You would think you would yell and scream if they did that. Why don't our probation officers today, why are they so resistant? Not all of them. Many of them are right on board with this. It's the administrative structure that blocks them from doing it. But why don't they want to reinforce behavior? Because they're designed to be a referee. So what do coaches do? They're supportive, they're trustworthy, they're authority figure, they're warm, they're consistent, they don't allow people to walk all over them, but they sure acknowledge, even on normal, everyday drills, plays, they encourage people to succeed. Feedback, warning, sanctions, and revocation are our feedback. Most people don't, again, generally, most people don't acknowledge when clients have negative UAs. But we sure as hell give them a sanction form and have them sign it when they have a positive one. Now, there's people in my agency which we're trying to clean up and figure out, but a client will come in and say, hey, look, I tested, they didn't have a drug test. I used drugs over the weekend, I just want to let you know. Some of my staff actually have them sign an affidavit saying that they tested, that they used drugs. Or they'll say, okay, well, let's go get a drug test. For what reason? If someone comes in and says, I use drugs, why would you go give them a drug test? Because they have to have the confirmation, they have to have it in the paper so that because it's a rule, and if someone found out that they were told that they used drugs and we didn't confirm it and test it or have them sign an affidavit, that they're going to get in trouble. That's an administrative process. That's not a staff issue. That's an administrative issue that's sending signals that say it's important to be a referee. Professional expertise. A referee does what? How do referees get chosen for All-Star games and Super Bowls? They're procedurally the best. They have the least missed calls, they monitor how they do, and they find the 5 or 6 or 12 or 2 umpires or referees that had the best season, and they pick that team. Professional expertise for us is core correctional practice. It's having staff who actually understand and are skilled at change behavior. Organizational culture, one of control, risk management, risk reduction plans. You hear all of those things coming out of the 90s that are still ingrained in what we do, versus one of human service, one of reaching out and helping people. And then organizational goals, efficiency and equity, versus behavioral change and a good life. And I can tell you right now, we're going to talk about how you know that your organization is a referee organization or a coach organization, and whether your staff are that or not as well. So let's talk through risk assessment. If you're a referee, what is risk assessment used for referees? What do you think?
The intent to see.
Say again?
You're gonna, at what level you're going to supervise?
Supervision level?
What level of supervision? What kind of plan? Supervision plan. And your supervision plan on that risk is what? If you're high risk, what am I going to do?
See more often.
I'm going to monitor the hell out of you. Right? You're low risk, I'm going to leave you alone. You're going to self-correct. But a referee is going to look. You can't tell me that, so go back to my Cincinnati Bengals, perfect, right? Who's considered a dirty player. You can't tell me that refs aren't watching him for bad play. Why wouldn't you? If you knew that this person in front of you, if you're a referee and this person in front of you, there's a good chance that they're going to do something really bad, wouldn't you watch them more often? Right? So that's what we do as referees. What do we do as coaches with a risk assessment?
Where do we need to work?
Where do we need to work? Where do we need to improve this person before they get put into a situation that they aren't going to be successful at? Think about that. That's really, how many of us are perspective in our approach towards people? How many of us, day one, say, okay, let's take a look at where down the road you're going to struggle and let's get you some stuff? Most of us are reactive in the field. Most of us wait till they fail and then say, I get people who score high risk on our risk assessment, and some of the folks, and we're still working on this, some of the folks in the field say, well, I didn't send him to thinking for a change because he showed up the first time and he was polite and hadn't violated anything yet. So I know it said that he's high risk in peers and attitudes. I know it said that he's high risk overall, which means he has a 52% chance, or people like him have a 52% chance of reoffending. But the guy in front of me said he's okay, and so I'm going to wait to see what happens. And the problem is what? If we wait to see what happens, something's going to happen. And maybe not. The problem is sometimes it doesn't, right? Because it's not a 100% failure rate. It's a 52% failure rate. And so when nothing happens, what happens to us? That was the right play, right? That was the right call. And so, and we don't look at the failures, we look at the times where it's like, well, you know, he said it and it worked. Or if not, what's the problem? If he fails, then what?
We see why.
An asshole lied to me. He said he had everything going for him and he doesn't. It's his fault. If he would have just told me the truth that you're struggling, I would have brokered out some services and found someone to fix it. Risk management, same thing. Address barriers. What does a referee type community supervision officer, what does a referee do with barriers? Someone comes in, doesn't have transportation. Someone comes in and has a mental health issue. If you're a referee.
Tell them where to go.
Do what?
Tell them where to go.
Tell them, you have a conversation with them and you say, you know what? I'm not the one that got put on probation. You figured out how to get to your drug dealer, you can figure out how to get to my office. I've heard that conversation 5,000 times from staff. You figured out how to do X, you can figure out this. If you wanted it bad enough, you want this, you want to stay in the community, you figure out your barriers. Barriers to a coach is what? Exploring options. Helping them with calls, right? I mean, anyone ever gone through the DMV? Right? It's the most convoluted process. Right? You got to stand in line, then they tell you it's the wrong line, and then come back, and then you don't have this piece of paperwork, and you don't. I mean, sane people can't get through that thing. And folks that are struggling with barriers, and we say, well, go over there and get your ID, and don't help them. Right? We're not exploring. We're not going out. Coaches would show them how to do it. Would walk with them. How many coaches get out there and throw the football with someone, or show them how to catch a ground ball, or shoot a free throw? Right? But as probation officers, we don't do that. We, at best, if we broker, it's like, okay, here's a list of services, go get them. And let me know when you got them, and I'll mark it down in my book that you got them. That's a referee. Measuring outcomes. What measure, and this is an agency issue, and a lot of these, let me be honest, are not individual people issues. It's a systemic issue. I'm not blaming the staff on this. I'm blaming the environment. There are cultural norms and group norms that have driven us to believe these things and to buy into these things. This isn't a damning of us as employees or as individuals. This is us as a system that has developed one that is a keywordy system, and we really need a Dvorak system. The doctor, do they give you a case plan, the goal and objective and technique? No. They say, what's going on with you? What's your problem? And here's some stuff to help you. And here's some of your options. And which one would you like to take? Sometimes they say, look, you can do this or do that. If you do this, you're going to die. And if you do that, you might still die. right? But they're going to tell you because they know. They know what's the likelihood of this intervention working versus this one for what's going on with you. We just say, well, and this is my favorite. This is a good referee. Some dude's tested positive, some person's tested positive 4 times for drugs. Bring them in, start talking to them because we're going to do that MI, we're going to MI them. Like it's a verb. We're going to MI them, and so I'm going to say to them, so what do you think you should do different? How many of us have caught ourselves saying, what do you think you should do different? All of us have. It's a dumbass question, right? If they knew what to do different, what do you think they would have done? They don't want to be sitting in your office, hoping that this isn't the time you're going to blow the whistle really loud. They don't know what to do in that situation. They don't know how to stay sober. They don't know how to impact a different outcome for themselves. They may not even know what's going on and why they're using. And we're asking, well, what would you do different? I wouldn't use. Oh, that's a good answer. Good job. Okay, we're going to monitor your use and see if that happens. Agencies get away from that. Agencies go to small, innovative ways to help people be successful, and then they celebrate the hell out of that and track it with their staff. Agencies that are team owners, right, that are coaches, that are designed to that, develop clear and consistent expectations based on values, not on policies and procedures. Right? Think about it. How many administrators in here? Write a policy and procedure on some behavior that you want your officer to respond to. There are 27,000 contingencies. How do you do that? Right? We create these behavior matrices, but they're not 72 layers deep. Like, you got to teach people the values of what they're applying, and then let them make some decisions. And if they adopt the values of your agency, and if you're a coach agency and you're managing people and saying, hey, look, our job is to help them get better, so let's try something. Let's figure out how we can help this person get better. What do you think? And they say, I don't know. You tell me. And then we coach them and support them and help them and reinforce them and recognize that they are going to fail. People are still going to fail no matter what we do. Our goal is to get fewer of them to do it. Coaches still lose, right? But the less they lose, the more we celebrate. And we don't celebrate success in our agencies, right? How many of you guys have posted successful completion rates for your staff? We don't even know who saw them. Right? And if we do, I made this mistake, and so again, not judgmental, but acknowledging that we've now become woke. Right? We're now out of that gray area, and we can see things differently. My first year at Harris County, I had my research staff do a whole bunch of stuff. They calculated recidivism rates for every staff person. We controlled for how much time you had with the person. And then we sent out, what is your failure rate or your recidivism rate for your population? Sounds great, right? Because what's the goal then? What are we trying to accomplish? A reduced recidivism rate. That's bullshit. We should have been accomplishing an increased successful completion rate, not a reduced recidivism rate, because even I caught myself looking at it the wrong way. Right? Agencies have to consider that, because what do they hear? What do referees hear if it's a reduced recidivism rate? Because they don't control the outcome. If you say our job is to reduce recidivism, what do they hear? Well, we're going to have to hide it. You want me to blow the whistle less. You want me to see things and not call it. Right? Come on in. They're coming to get me. So we want them to ignore behavior. That's what they hear when we say we want to reduce technical violations. They hear, you want me to blow the whistle less. When we say reduce successful completions, you want to reduce recidivism. But increase recidivism, we want to increase recidivism. We want to increase successful completion rates. You have to do something to get that. You can't just ignore something. We have to have a clear mission as an agency. We've got to establish operational assurance, not confidence fidelity. Confidence fidelity is just you count widgets, right? It's from management software, management theories that say if you track things and you have lists, People will do them. Lists are not quality. That's not quality assurance. Quality assurance or operational assurance is theories that say we're going to make sure that the fidelity of what you do is good. We don't care that you saw someone, we care what you did with them. And we've got to figure out ways as agencies to break that silence and track that and see what people are doing and to support them in adopting those strategies and those skills. Because one of the things that Scott Steinberg said the other night, and I think I said this yesterday, was that the number one thing that he's found in his research on why people don't adopt innovation is because of fear. They're afraid to fail. They're afraid it's not going to work. They're afraid to look stupid. Right? All of those, and we're all fearful. People don't get up in front. People don't ask questions because they're afraid. Right? So we've got to break that and create an environment of learning where everyone is doing a job and we can all improve. Could you imagine a football field where a coach sees something go wrong or someone holds someone and they don't talk to them about how to do it differently and how to avoid holding them next time? That never happens on the field. But it happens all the time for us. We see clients and staff not engaged in appropriate behavior and we just kind of, maybe they'll stop. Why would you pick someone on your team that they couldn't perform for you? Right? You've got a team. You have to get the best operations, the best work out of that team, regardless of who's on your team. You just took a coach's job and you got this kid who can't do anything. Right? But they got to play. There's a rule they have to play. So you've got to be able to establish, as a staff person working with people, you've got to recognize and notice, who did I include as a coach here? Management. Organization is the owners, but everyone from top down are coaches. Right? They're all in the play. You have multiple coaches. You have a line coach, you've got a quarterback coach, a defensive end coach, you've got a head coach. All of them see themselves as coaches. Imagine if you're a football referee and they hand you a playbook that is the wide receiver playbook and you're a referee. If you're a referee and you get a wide receiver playbook from your boss, what are you going to do? Not for me. Why'd you give me this? Oh, it's so that I can see, so I know where they're going to be, so I can watch for them to cross that line, so if they get held or there's pass interference, I'll know exactly where to look. Evidence-based practices to referees type staff is like handing a wide receiver playbook to a referee. It's useless. They don't care about evidence, and not because they're bad people, but because they're an organization that is not tied to reducing recidivism. It's tied to a behavioral change and improving successful completion. See, I even did it myself. It is tied to procedural justice and checking boxes. So we have to develop a playbook that's designed to help players improve. How do you become a better coach? I've coached now all three of my kids in a sport, and every single practice, every single game, I take a step back and I say, okay, what could I have improved today to help this person? What drills? I go online and I look for what drills I can do because my team's not hitting, right? They're fielding really well, and that was my expertise, so I'm teaching them how to field. And then while I'm teaching them how to field, I have the kids throwing to each other to hit, and they haven't learned any hitting, right? So we lose games 1-0 instead of 12-10, right? Because we're really good fielders, we're terrible hitters. So what do I have to do if I'm a coach and I want good hitters on my team? I gotta learn, I gotta research, I gotta become a professional coach that says, you know what, if I want a different outcome with my team, I gotta be able to teach them differently. They're not gonna just show up one day and start hitting. I've gotta teach them the techniques, and as officers or as staff, as coaches, and as supervisors, we gotta learn our craft. We gotta learn our craft of being a good supervisor, and that doesn't mean a super probation officer, right? Because that's how we see ourselves, as we're a super referee. Right? What we should see ourselves as our clients are our staff, and it's our job to grow them and to coach them and to support them and to work through their fears and to figure out how they can get better at coaching. A good individual recognizes that people on supervision are human beings with strengths, barriers, needs, culture, and systems, and that they operate within all of those, and that it may just not be about you. It may be about them. Or it may be about you. You need to look at that. Right? So we've got to teach people to treat people with respect and dignity and humanity and human services. And we have to recognize that the person sitting in front of us is trying to do their best. That includes supervisor to staff. They're trying to do their best. And how do we improve that? We have to own the losses and don't shy away from them. Good coaches don't get bogged down on the fact they lost. They adjust. Right? As referees, we stay away from losses and wins. Look, how many times have you heard your staff say, look, wasn't my fault. On a success too. Well, I didn't do anything to help them be successful. They did it on their own. Because we don't want to own successes, because if we own successes, we do what? We own the failures, and that's scary. I say you own a part of it. You own a big part of it. You own a very big part of whether people make it or not. Because if you don't, then we have the robot that I showed you yesterday. Because if you don't own the person in front of you and say, I'm going to do my very best to make you successful, we have a computer sitting in front of them asking, are you following your conditions? Adjust on the fly. And the hardest one that I challenge our staff, so every month we hire new staff, so we have about 700 employees, so we hire a few people every month. I meet with every new hire as a group for 2 hours talking about our values and missions of our agency. And one of the things that I challenge them to be is great. I challenge them to be great, to make a difference in people's lives. Don't stand there, don't wait for someone to do it, don't wait for them to fail, but to be great. Because it's scary, but it's so exciting to be able to have a whole, imagine, we have 100,000 community supervision officers and corrections folks in the country, and we all are working towards our team getting better. Incredible opportunity. And so this really got born out of how do we implement effective practices? How do we get our motion forward? And the problem is, and you hear it, and I know anyone that's ever trained, anyone that's ever done any implementation science stuff, work with people, you hear this. We already do that. You teach them a new cog skill, well, we already do that. We're just asking you to rearrange what you're doing because we're afraid to tell them maybe what they're doing isn't successful and we should change. What they might be doing it. They may be doing a risk assessment. That's not really what they're saying. What they're saying is we're doing a risk assessment in the context of a referee. And we can't implement evidence-based practices without also changing the culture of our organizations and our criminal justice system. They have been punished. Probation is not a punishment in my eyes, right? That's a different Dvorak moment, of course. Right? Probation is the mechanism to keep people from going to prison, not the mechanism to get them into prison. 50% of the people that are in prison today across the country, 51%, were on probation first. Means 49% committed a crime and went to prison on their own. 51% were on probation, sorry, not on probation prior, currently on probation and ended up in prison, which means they either failed for a technical violation or a new law violation while under supervision. That's astounding, right? That's horrible. And we have to do better than that or someone's gonna come after us. Someone's gonna come after us and say, you guys, we don't need you. Because of that 50%, 60% of that 50% are coming back on technical violations. Which means that if they weren't under supervision, a portion of them wouldn't have committed a new offense and got caught by the police. And so we would reduce, there's arguments now, you'll see them in Perspectives in a couple months, so read the Perspectives article, it's got the journal items coming out. There are people who are saying we are way too big to succeed, we're too big of an organization, we have the ability, right? We send more people to prison than anyone else because of technical violations. 60% of the reason, 60% of the source of prison revocations from probation are for technical reasons. And if they wipe that out, prison populations would decrease by 30% immediately. And we've got to beat that. To be relevant and to be where we are and to really love our job. Like, I mean, I know, like, how many people know a referee's name? Okay, you know a few, right? I know Harry Wendell Sack from baseball, and that's it. How many of you guys know what coaches mean? We all know coaches. Why wouldn't we want to be coaches and not referees? Like, that's such a better job. Sorry, referees. But it really is. And so with that, I want to thank you guys. I appreciate your attention. I want you to challenge yourselves, call yourself out, call your friends out, really ask questions, talk through. I'm open to answering anything. I need some strategies. We've failed more than we probably succeeded in this. But one thing that we're really trying to do is, in an effort of doing that, when we fail, we look at it and figure something different out. Because we don't want to fail again. And ignoring the failure just allows us to ignore it and allows us to fail again. So thank you guys very much. If you have any questions.